Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined by Sarah Ewart, all the way out from BC. So I know it's afternoon there. So thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time and joining us. And perhaps maybe you could start tell us a bit about who you are. You have a very interesting job, not your average law job, as you would say yourself there. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background, and we can get started from there.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for having me on the show. It's strange to be on the other side of this because I've been interviewing so many people for the last few months with the Not Your Average Law job. But yeah, my name's Sarah Ewart. I graduated in May from Thompson Rivers University. It's one of the three law schools in BC. When I graduated, I'm trying to think how old I am. I'm 35, so I was a mature student, and this wasn't my first career. I started in communications and graphic design and marketing. So my journey to law school was, I don't know what normal was, but it wasn't what most people take that I met along the way. So yeah, originally went to school for that, for communications, and then I worked in online marketing and graphic design for years. The longest job that I had, I was the supervisor of the digital media department for Vista Radio, which is sort of a medium-sized Canadian radio company, broadcasting company. So I did that for a while. I loved it, but there was something missing. It was a lot of fun, but I always had an interest in social justice issues, and in particular at that time, especially prisoner rights and the rights of people accused of crimes. So uh, I decided I wanted to go back to school, and my sister, who has several degrees by this point and knows a lot more about it than I do, she she found a program and she suggested it was what I wanted to do. And it was a justice studies program at Royal Roads University in Victoria, BC, which is part of it. Sorry, it's like a remote program, but you do uh, a 3 week residency twice during it. So you can work while you're doing it. It's between part-time and full-time, but it's still manageable to work a full-time job if you need to. So yeah, she found me this justice studies degree, and I looked at all the classes, and they were all law classes. And I was thinking, like, I can't do this. I have no experience in this. I know nothing about law. This isn't the right thing. I was thinking along the lines of sociology or something like that. So she told me, no, I think that this is what you want to do. I decided to sign up and give it, a couple weeks, and at most I'd maybe lose $1,000, which would be painful, but it would be worth a shot. And just kind of instantly clicked with me, and I started doing really well and really enjoying the content, and found this side of me that I maybe knew was there, but was just never thought that it was something that I could do. Like, it had a lot of imposter syndrome, I think. So yeah, I did that for 2 years. And while I was doing that, I still, being a lawyer was sort of a joke, and I had no experience in the justice field. So I got a job as a court clerk, mainly working in provincial criminal court. And obviously there met a lot of judges and a lot of lawyers who really encouraged me to apply for law school and were really instrumental in that. And so I think, yeah, I did the LSAT sort of on a whim, and I got my results. I think it was maybe April, which was far past the deadline to apply. But got advice that I should call and ask to apply late anyways, which I did for at Thompson Rivers University. I wanted to stay in BC, but I wanted to be in a smaller city, which Kamloops is, where that is. So they allowed me to apply late, and I got in, I think, a week later, and then I started school a few months later. But I started with a really open mind. I was interested in criminal law, but I knew that I had no idea what that meant to work in it or anything. And I think, as happens to a lot of people with open minds, it slowly became less of my interest than other things. So yeah, I didn't do things the traditional way throughout law school either. I don't think I found it was really hard to not fall into the trap of, following one path because it's sort of all you hear about. And there's the big firm career fairs and like you were talking about earlier, the OCI process and summer jobs and firm tours and all that stuff. And I knew that I didn't want to do that, but I still gave in. I still, did the career fairs and did a couple of things, even though I didn't want to do it. And I think I was really lucky to have a couple really good friends who were lawyers who kind of snapped me out of it and said, why are you doing this? This isn't what you want to do. Like, what happens if you get that summer job or that, the OCI job at the firm you don't want to work for? Then what? Then you take it because you feel like you should and you're lucky you got it. And then what if they offer you articling? Well, then you take that. And then they offer you an associate job and the money looks good, so you take that. And this whole time it was never what you wanted to do. And you're not happy doing it probably, and it can really ruin law for you. So I was lucky to have people telling me that and snapping me out of it a bit. So I spent my summer after 1L as a research assistant. I got a full-time research assistant job for a prof who I'm still really close with. And then took on a couple other research assistant jobs in 2L, and my summer after that, I had applied for and received a research scholarship. So I did that, and then a couple of research assistant jobs. So avoided doing any firm work all through law school, which it was not something that I didn't want to do. It just didn't, I found other things to do. So yeah, and then you can tell me to stop if I'm going too detail here, but so coming into 3L with the articling hunt, and at that point I had no firm experience, but I had court clerk experience and RA experience. And my whole time in law school to that point, people had been telling me it's going to be easy for you because you were a court clerk and you are aide and you've done all this research and you have like communication and marketing skills and all this. And people, I don't know if I was convinced of that. I wouldn't say I was super confident of it, but I didn't think it would be as hard maybe for me as some other people because of my experience. But I also was snapped out of that pretty quickly when I realized I think more than anything, my age was a hindrance. I think that from what I was told, there's a real thought that, having experience and being an older student makes you seem less moldable and less likely to take direction or follow the lead, and kind of that you would feel like you already know what you're doing. So I think I had in the end over 20 interviews and came in second 14 times for articling jobs. It was incredibly painful. I always loved the school part, and obviously that's stressful, but the articling search was the hardest part of law school. But that brings me to Not Your Average Law Job, because I became interested in labor law. And a lawyer near me, Sarah Forte, Forte Law, she practices in labor and employment and human rights. And someone told me, talk to Sarah, even if she doesn't have an articling job, she'll help you, because that's the kind of person she is. And so we talked, and she found out I had a background in marketing, and she had created this project, Not Your Average Law Job, years before, had a website built, was ready to go, but never had time herself to get it off the ground. So when she found out I had a background in marketing, she asked if I wanted to do it for the summer while I was securing articles. And that's how I ended up here as a project manager for Not Your Average Law Job. And as long as my application is approved by the Law Society, I'll be articling with Sarah in the next month or so.
Perfect. So I guess you could say it's not your average law journey there for you.
I love that.
And so we'll get to that. I mean, because there's so much in it from what you're doing there and what Sarah, the other Sarah, is doing as well. But let's go back from the beginning there, because I mean, I teach paralegal students. I know in BC there's no talk of maybe they can become licensed maybe one day or something. But
Mhm.
largely, I have a lot of people that are similar shoes where they had a different career. Whether it's marketing, I had like a registered massage therapist,
Yeah.
some kind of legal background, some completely different areas. And I don't know, a lot of times, or even just perspective, if people are interested, maybe you can share in terms of making that decision to go back to school, because it was doing it twice, right? First, it was going to Royal River, Royal River, I
Railroad.
think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and because I remember I have a friend who took a program that I think like peace studies, and then they had to go for 3 weeks to be in person, which
Yeah.
is interesting as well. But first, to make that decision to say, okay, you know what, I want to go into this, and you said your sister was helping you out. What kind of pushed you over that line to say, look, I've been doing marketing. You're still obviously using those skills, but now to go into something different. What kind of motivated you to go back to school and do that?
I just That's a tough question that maybe I haven't been asked that before, because I feel like there was a couple parts to it. I definitely at the time, I'm from Vancouver Island, which is pretty small and a little bit isolated, and that's where I was living and working for most of my adult life. And there's not a lot. I mean, maybe more now, but there wasn't a lot available in online marketing, especially in the city I was in was of I think 30 or 40,000 people. So pretty small, pretty limited job opportunities. And I felt like I'd kind of got to as far as I was going to go with it. I'm not that interested in sales. And without that piece, I was kind of getting bored and I didn't know where else to go. I'd had any job I was going to have in Courtney where I was living at the time. And so there was that I just felt kind of bored in what I was doing, and knew that there was more that I could do. Um, I had always liked school, and I think that's part of it. I think that's a fear for people that they've forgotten how to do it or that it'll be really hard. That's what I learned, is that it doesn't leave. At least for me, it picked up right where it left off. Like especially in an undergrad, writing a paper is writing. It's similar in law school too. Like writing a paper is writing a paper. There's a formula to it, and if you figured it out in high school, even you'll figure it out in your undergrad. But yeah, I think just this desire to do something exciting and mix things up and get out of this funk I was kind of in. Um, yeah, that's probably why I went to that in the first place. I just wanted to feel passionate about what I was doing, and so far it's stuck with me.
And was it any different than when you made this decision to do law school? And again, as you mentioned, you're past the deadline. You're like, let me see if I can start. I mean, sometimes that's tough as well, right? If you may have missed that 1 year, to come back a year later, you might,
Yeah.
it may be completely different there. But what kind of then got you through that next hurdle? So, well, I've conquered through the university there. I've got, this taken care of now. Why law school? And then what kind of, and who were involved there and kind of helping
Yeah.
you getting to that point?
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up, because I don't know if I would have gone, if because I felt like that, like there's this pressure as you're getting older that I need to do it now or never. And if I hadn't been able to, I likely still would have done it the next year, but I'm not sure about that. Actually heard one of the lawyers I spoke to for the project went back at, must have been 37 or something, and had said to herself, like, I can be 40 and be a lawyer, I can be 40 and not be a lawyer. And that was what got her to go, and I guess it's a bit of that. But I think working as a court clerk was what really pushed me over the line. And it's hard. Like, I think we all, especially women, have deal with imposter syndrome, and that's hard. And I think it's just having done the justice studies program and done like pretty incredibly well in it, was like, okay, like maybe I'm faking it, but how well could I fake it to be able to do this well? I don't know if that's possible. So I felt like, okay, well, I can do this. I did this. I did this really well. And then it was with the LSAT. Well, can I do this? It was still testing the waters, and I did well at that. And So it never goes away, but it felt like a ladder. Each step just got me closer to it. And yeah, working as a court clerk, um, I loved being in court, which is funny. Like, I don't necessarily know that I want to be a litigator, but I loved being in court, and it felt like, okay, if I want to work here, I can be a court clerk, which is fun. It was the best job I ever had. It was very fun, but I would have at some point gotten bored of it. Be a court clerk, a judge, a sheriff, or a lawyer, and it just felt like I was probably not going to be a sheriff, and you needed to be a lawyer before you're a judge. So it seemed like the right place for me, and I, made a lot of friends, and they seemed like right people, and yeah, I just, like I said, I got so much encouragement to go from the judges and lawyers that I met.
Now, maybe in terms of law school, what was that like? How did it feel? I mean, maybe your first day or first week. I think at least at Osgood, I believe they started their orientation today. Seems kind of random on a Thursday, but so I know law schools are probably picking up either next week or the week after Labor Day. But what was that like? That day before, the week before, and then getting to school and saying, okay, well, I made this decision. It wasn't this normal way of getting here, but I'm here just like everyone else that's here. And how did you enjoy that experience?
It was terrifying at first. I remember maybe a month before it started, we got an email from the activities coordinator. I don't remember what that role on the Student Law Society was called, but they sent you an email with the series of events, and included in it is like beer pong and all this stuff that I felt I had this moment of panic, like, I haven't done this for 10 years. I don't know if I'm going to fit in, and everyone's going to be partying, and no one's going to want to talk to the old lady. And so I actually wrote the person back and said, like, I don't know if I'm going to fit into this. Like, do I have to attend all these events? If I feel too uncomfortable, is it okay to miss them? And she was incredibly, like, understanding, and I think she said to me, even, I think you'll fit in more than you think you will. So I showed up expecting a totally different experience than I had, because I felt really, I mean, there was a lot of people around my age, if not a little bit younger, but even, the 24-year-olds, I was felt incredibly accepted, and made a lot of friends, and the age thing didn't matter. So, that first week was great. It was exhausting, but I never felt not included or out of place. And I actually last week talked to a lawyer Erica Verrett in Ontario, who when she was a little older as well, and we bonded over that, having that same experience, that she had this group of younger women who would take her out to bars and include her in everything, and they remained her really good friends. And yeah, that was my experience as well.
Now, in terms of maybe for students, again, like I said, I'll have some new students, and maybe they'll want to look at kind of making that adjustment to law. Right now, you said undergrad you write essays, law school you do some stuff. Was there
Yeah.
anything that you felt you had to kind of unlearn and learn a little bit differently when you were getting used to writing, memos and summaries and things like that, and what maybe in terms of making that transition, I mean, because there's also people who don't have maybe the benefit of what you did, where of going to university and then going to law school, right? I mean,
Right.
they went to university right away, and then they took 10, 15, 20, 40 years. I think I've spoken to someone who went to law school like in his 40 years after,
Yeah.
and what would you say kind of in making that part of the transition to school that you found really beneficial in terms of getting used to the work and not just the environment, and relearning how to play beer pong or whatever there were the social events?
The real important stuff, right? No. I don't know what your experience was when you went, JP, but for me, I found like there wasn't a ton of writing. It's so exam based that I think I wrote 3 papers, and those, although there's case law and policy and all that, because I'd gone to school in justice studies, it was pretty similar the way that you wrote them. They were just maybe a little longer. But in terms of writing memo assignments and that sort of thing, I think the biggest difference for me and the biggest shocker was that it's really hard to do well. They're not going to fail you, but I got used to, you follow the formula, you get an A+, that's how it works. You anything less than that is kind of shocking. And then you get there and you get I got some pretty harsh comments on things, and I didn't do well on everything. And that's, I think, when you're in the room and everybody has done well in undergrad and that's why they're there, you're not going to have the same experience. And I think that that's really hard to get used to. But you learn, you pick it up, and you have to learn how to take feedback. You're not always right, and someone who's been doing this a long time, a lot longer than you, is the one who's giving you the feedback and really like appreciate it. I think the most helpful thing that I'm pretty quiet and in groups and that sort of thing. So my first year I didn't talk at all in class or anything like that. It was terrifying to me. But after that, I started to get to know my profs, and I think that that was like, I hate giving advice because everybody has a different experience, but for me, that was the most helpful thing, is getting to know profs one-on-one in an area where I felt more comfortable to ask them for feedback and have real conversations. Like, they're amazingly brilliant people, but they're also just people, and having that more casual like relationship to like situation to be able to get feedback in was really helpful for me. Um, the exams are the biggest part for sure, and they're so different than anything I'd ever done, and I'd never really written exams before, so that would, more than the writing, that was the hardest thing for me to adjust to. And I think that, like I said, you can't really take anyone's advice or give any advice because it's all about figuring out what works for you. But you're probably not going to fail. Most people don't. I think you have to try harder to fail than you do to get an A. So you're probably going to be okay. Everyone around you is going to be really stressed out, especially the first year, and then it gets a little better. But just, it's not a competition for how long you can study or how good of grades you can get. You're gonna do fine. Like, you got there, you're gonna do fine. Do your best, find out what works for you, and realize that especially your first semester, it's gonna feel like a lot, and it's going to feel a lot different than anything else you've ever experienced. But you will settle into it. You do get used to it.
Yeah, I think I had a prof that said, I think it was criminal law or something, or the best F gets an A because it was all curved. So it's like
Oh yeah.
none of you really know criminal law at this point, and you're not expected to. But
Yeah.
so don't worry about what you do know. I mean, someone's gonna get an A. Most people will get the B's there because of how
Yeah.
it's curved. So again, it's something to get used to, as you said, because everyone, I mean, virtually everyone, there are very high achievers from undergraduate or their past, that maybe it was kind of a wake-up call to be like, oh, I don't know everything, right? So
Yeah.
different. And I think especially hitting the nail on the exams, right? These like open book analytical, fact scenario exams that you didn't really do in previous studies, that I think took a lot
Yeah.
of getting used to. What about, I mean, you mentioned that temptation, and people were talking to you didn't really want the OCIs or that corporate kind of jobs there, but how do you resist kind of getting caught up? And I know even for myself, and I'm probably the lawyers you spoke to who end up eventually going into what they really wanted, but how do you resist kind of that herd mentality, right? Everyone is applying. I better apply just to see what's there, test the waters, and I want to be part of what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
How do you kind of deal with all that during law school? Because I mean, I think I get this question all the time from students, about what's that process like, and how does it all work out? So maybe you can share kind of some insight with that.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And like I said, I think the one thing I went to a career fair and pushed myself to talk to people there and got numbers of cards and all that. So I didn't totally resist it either. It's really, really hard because it's kind of all consuming. And I remember being part of a club, and we were thinking about organizing an event to talk about less traditional career paths. And it didn't end up happening, but that doesn't happen at all. Like, I don't think most law schools have any kind of day for that or speakers about that or anything. Like, you just don't, you know, they're out there, but you don't hear about them at all. So it's really hard. That makes it harder to resist because you are thinking like, I don't want to do this, but what else can I do? And then you're not shown what else you can do. So that's really scary. I think for me, like I said, it was, I mean, not totally all friends from outside of law, but outside of law school for sure was really helpful. Um, I had one professor that I worked for in particular who was one of the people who said, like, you don't want to do this. I did this and I hated it. And I know you don't want to do this. So just stop. Like, why are you going to this career fair or whatever? So having that professor do that was really helpful. And then also another friend who's a lawyer said the same thing to me. But I think, yeah, talking to people outside of law school, whether they're lawyers or professors, or I guess professors are in law school, but other than students, people who really know you and know what you want. And law school is a way of making you forget why you went there. But people who can remind you of that, for me, was the most helpful thing, totally. And it, like I said, it feels totally scary because you hear the same messaging from students and faculty and everything about, well, if you don't, like, I remember I had a really good friend who thought that if you didn't do a 2L summer job, you couldn't article, like you had to do that to be allowed to article, because that's how strong the message is about getting that. And in reality, you don't have to go anywhere near a firm or 2L summer job at all. You don't have to do anything your 2L summer job. You can still, or during your 2L summer, you can still article. So yeah, keeping grounded by talking to people who are not in the race with you, because likely the people you're talking to who are in it are already taken over by the messaging as well. But if you slip and you try things, I think it's bound to happen. Just do your best and keep an open mind, and no matter what they tell you, know that there's more out there. I think, like, I wish that the Not Your Average Law Job project was around when I was in school, because what I've found through interviewing different lawyers doing kind of less traditional paths is that there's a real community, including UJP, like around Canada, that don't believe that and that wish that they rather had done things differently or were able to resist that. And I think everyone we've talked to with the project would be really happy to hear from law students who need some help remembering why they went. So yeah, reach out to people you don't know, even who you know are very vocal about their choices. There's people out there. There's a lot of them. You just don't hear about them often.
Yeah, so on I guess if this was like a TV show, it'd be like that's like the perfect segue right into then let's talk about not your average law job.
Oh, that's great.
And certainly I think one of the things here certainly we have in common here is we've got to talk to all these different lawyers and legal professionals across the country there. So maybe we could just start there. What have you found in this role as project manager? And I know a couple of weeks ago we talked and I was on the other end from talking to all these different people. What have you learned from them? And certainly, like you were just sharing, there are so many different paths and different areas of law and just different stories that no, it's great that we're seeing them highlighted, because it's hard sometimes to counter some of the messaging. I remember looking at the numbers and like I was shocked, like that's how little people do the OCI jobs. It felt like it was the if you inverted the
Yeah.
numbers, right? But
Yeah.
and I think that's the same, province to province, law school to law school, right? I mean, there's gonna be some variance, um, but there's so many different paths. And then maybe you can touch on kind of that in your role as project manager and the people you've got a chance to talk to. And it's also interesting because remember you were doing marketing, right? And a lot of these skills, I always tell my students, hey, they transfer. You never know where they're going to pop up in law, customer
Totally.
services, client relations, right? So
Yeah.
so that's great there as well. So maybe you could tell us what you've learned in this position.
Yeah, just touching quickly on what you said, I think that's one thing people forget, is that they can be as good as they want at research or whatever, the behind the scenes stuff, but it's still a customer service job. And having those skills is so incredibly helpful for sure. Yeah, I've learned so much from this job. I knew that it was going to be a pretty uplifting really perfect thing for me as someone who didn't want to follow that path. I knew it would be a perfect thing for me to do, but it's ended up being so much more. It's felt like a research study that wasn't intended to be a research study because all these themes have come out of it, all these things that all these people that we talk to who are really happy in what they're doing have in common. A lot of the same things come up. So it's definitely like, it's not an anti big law project at all. There's a lot of people who are happy in big law jobs, and we've talked to them and written profiles on them as well. I think it's just that it's such a small percentage of people, and it's like you said, it's presented as the only thing when really it's, you know, a small percentage of people end up doing that really in the end. So but yeah, the themes that we found, I think the biggest ones are probably that it's really important to design your practice, whatever that may be, wherever you work, around your life instead of trying to make what you're doing fit in your life. So to take time to think about what you want and what lifestyle you want, and find a job that fits that. Don't apply for things if they don't seem right. Like, wait it out and find that, because once you're in that job, you're probably not going to be able to, or it'll be a lot harder to make it fit your life. So, you know, if you, we spoke to one woman, Priya Sankar Papa, who's amazing, and she is from India and wanted to go back every year to visit her family for a couple of months. So she worked for the government for a while, and it was really like, you have to be at your seat these hours a day and every day, and that didn't work for her. So she ended up getting into immigration law and now can work, I think she tries to work about 2 or 3 months a year from India. And that was integral to her well-being. She could have just she could have kept getting jobs, but it was important for her to find something that really worked with what she needed in her life. And like I said, I think every lawyer we've talked to has designed their practice around their life in some way, and that's led to their happiness. Um, Other things are, I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, the need for flexibility, it seems to be really big, and that means different things to different people. So there's, you know, people like Priya who need to work from a different country for 3 months out of the year, but there's, you know, some people who just, they want to work 12 hours a day, but they want to work late at night and take the morning to exercise or read a book or whatever. Or people who only want to come into the office twice a week because they live out of the city and the commute is really long. They want to bring their dog to work, just things like that. Just everybody has a different meaning for the word flexibility, but I guess identifying what that level is for you that you need, and then finding a job that, or practice that works with that. Um, I think another thing is open-mindedness. We have a lot of lawyers that wanted to be lawyers since they were kids, and a lot that had no idea, like me. And even the ones that wanted to be lawyers since they were kids or knew an area they thought they were interested in, they were still open to other opportunities, and they sort of let kind of their desires and their interests and everything guide them, instead of just sticking, I'm going to do this because this is what I said I'm going to do. And if any of your students go to law school, they'll find there's a lot of people who say that. They come in and they know what they want to do and they're going to do this, and you wonder if when they do it, if they hate it, if they'll give it up or if they'll stay with it because they said they were going to do it. And I think happy lawyers are open to changing if it's not working for them, or, you know, taking a break from what they're doing and trying something else for a bit. Um, and another one is staying connected with people. We talked to one lawyer, Sophie, who I really love. She every time she accomplishes a milestone in her life, she'll call and let everyone know who's helped her along the way and thank them for their help in her getting there, which I thought was a really beautiful thing. And so I think it's staying connected to people who have mentored you or that you've mentored or whatever, but it's also staying connected to people outside of the profession is a big thing. I think one thing that I heard going to law school, and I think it's pretty common to anyone going who speaks to lawyers before, you almost get prepared. They tell you like, oh, get ready. What was I was told something like, get ready to basically lose everyone who you love, and only a couple of them will stick around when you're a lawyer. And that's just really awful messaging, and doesn't have to be the case. It's really important to hold on to those people, and they really ground you and remind you that lawyer isn't an identity, it's a job, and there's more to life than just that. So those are just a few of them, but what I just said kind of reminds me of one of my favorite things that I heard was one lawyer we spoke to, Dan McPherson, who lives in a really small town in Alberta and runs a practice, and he was talking about how, I don't know what it's called in Alberta, but here it's a lawyer's assistance program, and it's um, connected to the Law Society, and deals with improving mental health and helping with addiction issues and that sort of thing in the profession. And Dan said that they came to his law school, the Alberta version, and he'd been getting all this messaging, as I did, where you have speakers come in and they tell you this percentage of lawyers end up developing addiction issues, and the suicide rates are this, and mental health struggles, and you hear about all this stuff, that like how hard it is and how it affects lawyers. But they had come into Dan's school and done a talk and said, well, you can actually expect to be happy if you do these things, or like, it was a lot different tone. And how he phrased it was just that having that messaging that you can be happy, now that he is happy, he never expected any differently because he was told that he would. But if the only messaging you're getting is that you're going to be miserable, then you're probably going to be miserable because you think that that's what it is yeah, a life of anxiety and depression and all that. So that was one of, yeah, I hear every day talking to people, I hear just these really brilliant things that I never forget, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and for anyone in Ontario, we have the member assistance program, very similar, and I've had
Mhm.
people from the Law Society, Doran Gold comes to mind, amongst others, kind of sharing about that. And again, we have all those statistics, and we're doing a better job, I think, recently than in the past. Of, well, I mean, yeah, we see there's these issues, but what are we doing to kind of combat that, and how to be happier while being a lawyer? Because I mean, they're not like, uh, you can't have one and not the other type of thing, right? And although we're
Yeah.
getting the messaging, it's long hours and you're tired and no time for your family and so on. But you've shared there in terms of, people have how to take care of their mental health. I mean, I know, again, there's no cookie cutter answer, like as you were saying with advice, but it's good to have different perspectives, because maybe something will resonate for different people hearing from different options there. So is there anything in terms of that? You shared their one example, but what are other people doing? I know there were some people that have really fun practices, and they go and do music, or they go hiking, or anything that you found really interesting, because we get the stereotypical lawyer on TV.
Yeah.
Well, who give me some, maybe interesting attributes and things people do to take care of their mental health that you
Yeah.
probably didn't think about for someone in the legal profession.
Yeah, definitely. We have one of the first lawyers I talked to. Her name is Kate Cash, and she's amazing. I'm a big fan. She's a music lawyer in Ontario, which I think she's one of the few in Canada, because apparently it's just such a complicated area of law. But she got into it because she's a musician, so that's how she still plays a lot of gigs, and her community is all the music community. She's hitchhiked across Canada, playing guitar and singing, and so that's sort of still what she does to look after her mental health, is realize that that's the most important part of her life. And what she does as a music lawyer is support other people like her, who don't know what they're doing when they're given a contract assigned by a record company or whatever, and she actually passionately cares about helping them out. So yeah, there's that. There's another lawyer, Pauline Chan, who we haven't released her profile yet, but she's in Calgary. and she had started in big law, and it wasn't for her. She was really struggling, started making a plan to get out of law, and in doing so realized she had a real love for bar fitness and opened a bar fitness studio. So funnily enough, after she'd done that, she found this company, Good Lawyer. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they are kind of a service that works with freelance lawyers, and they do all the work but the lawyering, sort of, and they connect you with clients. So she found them. They really worked for her. She loves working with them, but now she's, a freelance lawyer, plus she runs a bar studio and she's an instructor, and that really keeps her going, and the community she's found through that. So yeah, we've had some really interesting people for sure. There's also Elsa, who's in, I think she's Crafty Lawyer on Instagram. She's in Ontario as well. And she is a jewelry designer. So as soon as her day ends, she starts making earrings. And it's not really a job for her, it's her total de stressor. But, she also sells them online and does well with that. So yeah, a lot of really interesting people.
And is there anything else there about the project there that maybe we haven't touched on? I mean, or you can also certainly share where people can access it. And I mean, there's all these great profiles of all these happy lawyers and all these interesting areas. I mean, anything more that you can share about the project there? I know your time as project manager is coming to an end, because hopefully,
Yeah.
your articling stuff gets approved by the Law Society in BC there, and you can start on that aspect. And then, a year from now, maybe we could touch base and you can tell me,
Yeah,
hey,
love
now I'm
that.
called to the bar in BC there, and I'm ready to start my own chapter.
I would love that. Yeah. So uh, about the project, so just to give a bit of background, I think I neglected to give that, but it was started by Sarah Forte, who I mentioned earlier, because she, especially as a young lawyer, was becoming really like frustrated and saddened to see so many young lawyers leaving the profession because the traditional path really wasn't working for them. So they just, gave it a try, didn't work for them, and then left entirely. And she knew, I mean, at this point, she started a firm in Surrey, and is doing things in a way that works really well for her. So she knows that there are other paths, personally by experience, and really wanted to get that message out there that there's other ways that you can do it and that you can be happy doing it. So I think what's interesting about that too is that she's really comes at it from the lawyer point of view, because she's been working as a lawyer for so long, and then I kind of have the law student point of view because I'm just out of law school, and I think that works really well together because those are two different aspects of it. But yeah, she just wanted to, I mean, give people who are thinking about leaving the profession resources to make career change, or the profiles to kind of provide inspiration and give them new ideas, or a new, yeah, and a new passion for it that they or new ideas that they didn't even know existed, sort of thing. So there's the inspiration part of it, but then there's also the concrete resources, like we provide books and links and all that sort of thing for making career change. And then we also have a job board where we only post jobs that are have something not average about them. So we don't post every job out there. We just post the kind of unique ones, which has been going really well. And then, like you said, I'll be, hopefully, as long as it's approved, starting articling in September. But I'll still be involved in the project, which I'm so glad. I'm not ready to let it go. So we're going to be hiring a new project manager as a part-time thing, probably 10 to 15 hours a week. So if any of your students want to apply, we're pitching it to law students, paralegal students, anyone in the legal profession that's looking for something just part-time. And yeah, it's just a team, would be a team of 3 of us, and it's a really amazing job that I wish I could have had all through law school. But you can learn more about the project and see the job posting at notaveragelaw.com. And then we're also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, all at Not Average Law.
Perfect. Now, one of the things that just on that is, I'm sure like how you have to reach out and connect with me and probably doing with all these other people. One of the things that I get asked for students is, especially now with the pandemic, and it's not as simple as maybe sending an email and going for a cup of coffee or something with people in the legal field. But how have you found reaching out and connecting? And maybe you can share about networking and mentorship and the important piece that has for students. And is it as easy as just firing off like a message on LinkedIn, and or have you have some more strategies there in terms of connecting with lawyers? And what can you share with students about who are looking to make those connections for potential internships or articling or jobs down the road?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think we've mentioned that I spoke to JP earlier, and we're going to be releasing a profile on him soon. But I know in our conversation, we talked about that, how it's kind of a numbers game. And I think that that's true, that, yeah, it is as easy as sending a message to someone on LinkedIn. And the numbers are pretty good. Usually people will write back, and even if they're not able to do it, generally the biggest reason I've gotten that someone's not able to do this project is that maybe they're new at a job and they just want to give it a year before they're settled, before they speak publicly. So, but even as a law student, I, looking for work, sending cold emails, sending cold emails, maybe your numbers game isn't that good, but no one's going to get upset with you, or I hope not. They just aren't going to write you back. And even people who weren't interested in setting up a time to talk or anything like that, I generally would get back encouraging responses or something friendly. But I found my fingers crossed, as long as my application is approved, I found my articling job through that. Exactly, as I found an area of law in the last year of law school that I really, really liked, and started reaching out to lawyers in that area. And actually, I think how that one worked is I spoke to a friend who's a lawyer in Calgary and has a lot of connections, and he put me in touch with a criminal lawyer in Vancouver, who put me in touch with a labor lawyer who wasn't able to speak to me, so put me in touch with one of her associates, who put me in touch with Sarah. So it was a whole series of one-on-one conversations, and it led to working on this project. So yeah, I think you might send out more messages than you hear back from. LinkedIn is a great place to do it, or finding someone's email on their website. But it's not going to hurt you to do it. It's time consuming, but personally for me, I don't love group networking events. They're not where I feel most comfortable and most able to connect. So for me, it was great. I love being able to connect this way one-on-one. And I also felt like it was when you're not specifically asking for a job and you're just putting it out there to gain information or make a new connection, then you're able to have kind of a little more casual of a conversation with the person. And I think that that's even more beneficial, because once you establish this connection, then they want to help you. And it doesn't need to be a formal thing. I think it pays off more for it to be, there's a level of formality when you're speaking to someone in the profession with more experience than you, for sure. But yeah, we're all just people, and we're all just looking for connection. And I don't know if I found that the pandemic made it harder to do that, unless you're the kind of person who flourishes in a big networking drinks sort of situation.
Yeah, and certainly it's good then different people kind of network in different ways, and the whole wine and cheese kind of thing's not
Yeah.
for everyone, but doesn't mean that you don't have different ways to connect with different people there.
Yeah.
Now on the pandemic, just before we finish up here, certainly I just forgot, obviously half of your law school experience almost
Yeah.
was virtual there. I know you did university like that, so you were maybe a little bit more equipped, but any advice on that point there for students who are entering school now, and maybe they didn't have as much or didn't have any experience with Zoom law school, wherever it is.
Yeah.
What worked for you? And again, I know everyone's different, but how did you find, kind of, especially immediately having to make that transition to in person, and then go back remotely? What did you find worked for you, and what can you share?
Yeah, it's really hard, especially because nobody expected it. I know some people really struggled with it. Personally, for me, I wasn't a person who ever studied at the school. I'm distracted easily by people walking by and all of that. So I was always studying at home. So the school part of it for me, and I know there's other people like that out there, I was actually kind of better in some ways. I definitely miss the in-person classes, but to be able to, I don't know, there's opportunity there, right? I was able to structure my day more like a work day, which I was used to as someone coming out of the workforce. So I could start at 8 in the morning and finish at 5 at night, with no distractions and no driving to school, and all that stuff. And I had a lot more time in my day, so I rarely did any work on weekends, and I just wouldn't have been able to do that in person. But I did miss for sure the in-person classes. There's some stuff that's not the same online. I think it's great that you're doing things like this, JP, because I found, as my, having my biggest advice be to get to know your profs. That's a lot harder online, and I think it's something you have to really try to take advantage of the one-on-one meetings when they're offered. I know a couple of times, like I said, because I don't speak a lot in in the big group classroom discussions. It was easier for me to do that online, but still, I made a couple of times appointments with profs to have one-on-ones during their office hours, and it was never about a question about the content or anything. It was just to introduce myself and let them know, like, I probably won't say a lot, but I might in the chat, and I'm still listening, and I'm really excited with this class, and just sort of so we could get to know each other. And I found that really helpful, even if it's kind of nerve-wracking. Yeah, I think that that's still important. It's really easy to turn off your camera and your mic and just not be present, but I don't want to say you'll regret it, but there's more benefit to having your camera on and stuff than being seen as a good student. It allows you to connect with your prof and your other students as well. For me, because I was halfway through it, I didn't have the issue of not being able to make friends and that sort of thing, because I already had the people that I'd gotten to know, luckily. And I think that would have been really, really hard coming in 1L. But from what I've heard, people have still found each other and made connections, and luckily get to meet in person at some point. But that was, yeah, the school part I could handle. The social part, it was hard for sure. It was hard, but um, as tired as we all get from Zoom, take advantage of that when there's opportunities to connect still.
Perfect. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing about your story, as well as Not Your Average a law job there, and all the great things that you and Sarah are doing. Any final words of wisdom here for students? And again, congratulations on getting to the point there. Well, fingers crossed everything goes smoothly, and you can start on your articles next month. And I don't know how long. I should probably know because I did just get my license in BC, but
Oh
how long
yeah,
it kind of takes to
yeah,
get to that point for you, and the exams and the PLCs
yeah.
and things like that. But
About a
all
year,
the
yeah.
best in getting through everything, and being called in the next year.
Thank you so much. No, I've really enjoyed doing this. And like I said, it's weird to be on the other side of it, but appreciate the opportunity. As far as last words go, I think just if you are going to go to law school or in any kind of profession or path that you take in anything, to just keep an open mind and remember why you're doing what you're doing, and the other things in life that make you happy and give you purpose. And it doesn't all have to be tied to your job, but if a lot of it is, that's okay too, as long as you're putting in those long hours because it's something that you want to do, not because it's something that you feel like you have to. I think that makes a big difference. um, but yeah, also connect with us and reach out if you ever want to talk to me or the project in general. Read through some of our profiles if you want to get to know about the different paths out there. And like I said, any of the people that we've written profiles on would be really happy to hear from students or anyone looking for advice on next steps. So yeah, if you don't have the community in place already, go and find it. It does exist out there, and it's really amazing, and is really supportive and helpful, and definitely has helped me a lot. So yeah, you can find us. It's notaveragelawcom and at notaveragelawcom on all social media.
Perfect. All the best, Sarah. And thanks again for joining us, and to everyone else for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. And again, it's always great to hear from different people. And I'm sure all the people you've heard from, now you're going to go back for your next set of interviews and like, oh, now I know what it's like. So let me change some of the questions there. So all the best. Take care.
You too. We'll see you later. Bye.